you think is appropriate, you can vote for, 4 or 5. And one of the possibilities would be also a 2-term limit, but that begins once we're like 6 years into the charter. At the beginning, you've got that.
Money has that question. Is anybody opposed to the first full term, as you mentioned?
Say it one more time.
Is anyone opposed to, again, once this charter gets kicked in, you may have some people for 2 years.
Right.
Okay, so term limits starting after those 2 years, full terms?
Oh, I see what you mean.
Following, okay,
Yeah,
full-
like a-
So we're talking, if we go 3 term limits, essentially somebody could be on 14 years. Follow? So I just want to make, is everyone fine with that concept?
And would we then say that people elected the first time to a 4-year term, their clock wouldn't start ticking either, or
That's
the
what I'm
clock wouldn't
asking the
start
question.
ticking?
Yeah, 'cause if
Your
you're
clock
just
starts
staggered.
taking the first full 4-year term, or does
I
a
believe
2-year
so.
term?
Going from the start.
Yeah, I'm confused.
Yeah. Well, you're not going to have somebody serve 14 years. The most you'd have them serve would be, 12 years, 3 term limits, 4 years, and the person who's gets staggered, who's going to be for the 2 years, that's still a term, 2 years.
Okay.
So, then 4 and 4, so we'd have to make some stipulation as to those 2-year term people, I think.
But
Well,
the
can I
suggestion
say-
was the clock wouldn't start ticking until one term was complete.
1 2-year term or 4-year term?
Well, that's what we're
2
doing, that's what we're better
Well,
about.
That's
I
what
mean,
the
you
first
have
debate
a position where people that run 20 years from now could serve 2 terms, but the first people that are elected could theoretically serve more than 2 terms to avoid the lame duck problem. One other issue with the, remember, in the initial election, people are going to have to choose whether to run for a 4-year term or a 2-year term. The question becomes, why would you run for a 2-year term and not a 4-year term if you got to run countywide and expend all the effort and resources? Why would you do that? Why would I pick the 4-year or the 2-year one instead of the 4-year one? One of the reasons might be if the 2-year one, if you had the possibility of serving perhaps for a longer period than the 4-year term. If the 2-year person could serve for 14 years and the 4-year person could serve for 12 years, you might have at least some incentive to run for the 2-year term.
Jim, why did somebody just switch from running for governor to lieutenant governor? People look at the competition. So you might run because you think you have a better shot at the 2-year term.
Right. Okay, what's I'm sorry.
One thing, the other, I think there's 2 other charters that have the staggered terms, and what they have done is that if it's 9 members, the, say, 5 highest vote getters would have a 4-year term, and the next 4 would have a 2-year term automatically. So it doesn't, you don't necessarily have to say I'm going to run for a 2-year term. It could be decided by the voters. I believe 2 of the charters in Pennsylvania have that. It's just quoted that way.
I agree with that. I think that's very good.
But then we still have the dilemma.
So,
Mr. Conrad.
well, then Jack, the guy who finishes 9th's got a shot at going 10 years in a 2-year term. The guy who finishes 1st is out after 8 if we go to the 2-year term. So
Well, I'm not sure that do you want to take the 4 weakest candidates and run them at the same time for re-election? Also, I think you want to have in the future, you're going to want to have a healthy mix of, strong and weak candidates in each election. We're going to start out with a process where the first time we have a re-election campaign, so 2013, the first re-election campaign, the 4 weakest candidates from the first time are up for re-election. Is that what you're going to do?
They only be weak by 20 votes, 80 votes, who knows? It's going to be, if we go to 11-man committee, there's not going to be very many votes to be elected.
Well,
I mean, person can lose by 3 votes.
I understand your point, Mr. Schumacher, but I would say in our board, the distance between 1 and 11 was fairly significant. It might have been 22,000.
but if you,
No, between the last 2, but between the top and
but
the
Jim,
bottom.
if you took the 3rd, if you went 3rd to 8th, or 3rd to 11th, in that case, it's pretty close. But as Ms. Wolfen pointed out, top vote getter, maybe he's not the best man for the job, so I think the strength of when they rerun, if you determine on the job they do, not how many votes they got the first time they ran.
We're discussing 2 separate questions now. We're discussing 2 we have two separate issues going on. Let's go around the table and ask everybody what their thoughts are on term limits. I'll just leave it open.
Straw vote.
Yes, a straw vote, not even a straw vote, sort of a straw
They want me to record it?
question.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Carnahan?
Could I suggest the first thing we would talk about was whether the first term, whether it's a 2-year or for 4-year, would that term be part of the, as the expression was, the clock is ticking? If we get that question out of the way, maybe we can move to the next one.
Two questions in one, can we handle it?
Who's
I'm just gonna go around, you guys say whatever you want.
Who's going to win the Super Bowl?
All right, let's start.
Mr. Carnahan, here's my question. What do you think?
On term limits, I'd say 4, and I believe that the clock ticking right from the start, as soon as you're put into office.
So how many terms? 2 or 1?
3 terms.
3 terms?
3 terms.
Okay, so people that are elected to a 4-year term the first time could serve a total of 12 years? People that
If they
serve-
choose to.
If they choose to, but people, they're eligible to serve 12 years. People that are elected to the 2-year term, how many years would they be eligible to serve? If it's either 10 or 14.
10.
10. Okay.
Yes.
So that means, 3 terms.